You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our hearts. We've got love that won't depart. We are always in the stands, 'cause we're super Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphins Show, sponsored by BetUS, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker, and, well, today I am not joined by my brother from the exact same mother, but you will hear from Aaron the Brain in a little bit. Of course, we weren't together earlier this week because I was celebrating my wife's birthday, and now we are not together again because, well, so here's the thing. I'm a dad, and I am a husband. And as much as I love talking about the Miami Dolphins with my brother and with all of you, at the end of the day, this is a hobby. This is something that I do for fun. And my first obligation in life is always to my family, and it always will be to my family. And this has been this has been some kind of week for us. The other day, my 5-year-old spent a day and a half puking and is only just now starting to turn a corner. And meanwhile, now our 2-year-old is beginning a downturn, and she's come down with a fever. So who knows what's going to occur. And actually, as I am recording this, my wife has left town to go spend a birthday weekend with her friends and our dear friends in Ohio. And, and that's one of the things that you do when you have a partner that you love and trust. You let them go off and do their thing, and you stay home with the kids for the weekend. And that's all good, And sometimes the life stuff gets in the way, and, you got to make alternate plans when it comes to podcast land. But you know what? We're still here. We're still talking about the Dolphins. And, yeah, the schedule's a little off because some real-life stuff needed to be taken care of first, but whatever. We're here. And, we're doing things a little bit differently today. You'll hear from me for a bit, and then you will also hear from the Brain. Those of you who have been listening to the show for a long time or been watching the show for a long time, you know that this is something that happens from time to time. We can't get together, can't make it work, so we each do our own segment, and that's what we're doing here today. And rather than me going and doing a deep dive on the X's and O's of Sunday's game with the Steelers, I'd rather talk about what I think are the three most likely outcomes of the game and what I think those things would mean for the Dolphins. But of course, before I do that, a reminder to all of you, if you're not doing so already, to make sure you're following me on Twitter. I'm at Amplified to Rock. The show is at Same Old Dolphins. You can follow the Brain at Aaron the Brain. We invite you to subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. If you're watching this video, take a second right now. Go ahead and click the like button. That's the little thumbs up gimmick underneath this video. Go ahead and click that. Then there should be an option right there to subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Do that as well. Turn on notifications so you know every time we go live or if new content is added. Got a lot of things coming your way this season. You can download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere that you get your podcasts. So we hope that you will do that. And of course, make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And you know what else you should also do is cue the haunted music, because Michael Myers sure is scary. But the last thing you need is to be hairy this Halloween. Luckily, our friends at Manscaped launched their 4th-generation performance package to make sure your pumpkins get the ultimate carving experience on this spooky day. Turn your bite-sized treat into a king-size candy and join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code DolphinsTalk. Make the right call this spooky season. It's trick or trim. Listen, have you ever tried to trim your balls and it turned into a Freddy Krueger film? Well, luckily, Manscaped is here to save the day and make sure you're feeling your best in your costume. Unlock your confidence with the Performance Package 4.0. Inside, you'll find the holy grail of men's grooming items, and they've made it that easy for you to upgrade your grooming routine. Manscaped also just launched their new Body Buffer. This 100% antibacterial body scrubber is just what you need to keep you fresh and clean this Halloween. Also, if you're looking like Wolverine and haven't cut your nails recently, be sure to look into the Shears 2.0 Nail Kit. So get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code DolphinsTalk at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code DolphinsTalk at manscaped.com. Say trick or treat to your beautiful new Halloweeny with Manscaped. And of course, make sure you grab yourself some t-shirts, pants, and outerwear from TrueClassic.com. Listen, if you've listened to this show before, you've heard me rave about True Classic already, so I'm not going to do it again. Just know that their products are soft, comfortable, and make you look good no matter what your body type is. Head over to TrueClassic.com, use the promo code DolphinsTalk, and you'll save 25% off your order. It's a great deal. All right, so let's get down to business, right? The overwhelming majority of Dolphin fans are excited for Sunday night. You might even say they'll be waiting all day for it. This is one of the stupidest lyrics of all time. Anyway, it's a huge game for a few reasons. First, it's on Sunday Night Football, so it's the first time the Dolphins have been featured on that stage in several years. I can't remember the last time, 5-6 years ago. Second, the organization is celebrating the 1972 perfect season team, and it really, it's starting to seem like every year we lose another couple members of that historic team, recently losing Coach Shula. So it's going to be special to honor them. It's the 50th anniversary of the year they became the only team in the history of the league to run the table and lift the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season. Sunday's game also has a little bit of extra juice because former head coach Brian Flores is returning. Yeah, sure, he's just the linebackers coach, but given how his departure from the team played out, well, it'll be interesting to see how he is interacting with the guys on the field before the game. I know there's a couple guys that are still friends with him. They get along pretty well, but there's a couple others maybe that's not the case for. Then you can also add some extra spice to that particular storyline because Stephen Ross returns to the organization following his 6-game suspension for tampering. So maybe we'll see him and Brian Flores exchanging some words on the field. Wouldn't that be interesting? Something to keep an eye out for, right? But of course, the main event, really, the big reason that Dolphin fans are excited for this game is that QB1, Tua Tagovailoa, returns to the lineup for the first time since suffering a concussion against the Bengals back in Week 4. And without getting into all the mess around what that means, because we've had that conversation on this show before and everywhere else, it's going to be just great to see Tua out there as the starting quarterback, no questions asked. And listen, there's also indications that Teron Armstead will be back as well, so that bodes well for an offensive line that has struggled without him for most of the last couple of games. And on top of that, the Dolphins are facing a Pittsburgh Steelers team that on paper seems to be exactly what the doctor ordered to get them back on the right track. So the question really is, how does it all play out? And here's what I think the 3 most likely outcomes are. Well, actually, there's another possibility I guess I feel like I do need to mention, but it's one that I sincerely hope does not come to pass. And some of you will probably be annoyed that I'm even mentioning it, honestly, but like the title of Tyreek Hill's podcast, it needed to be said. And there is a world where for the 5th consecutive game, the Miami Dolphins have to bring in a backup quarterback. I know. Yeah, you don't even want to hear me talk about it. And I get it, right? Nobody wants to deal with that. But if that should happen somehow, and again, I'm telling you, I want to stress that I desperately hope that it doesn't, it will force the Dolphins to have an entirely different conversation. And we're not going to get into that conversation because there's no need to have that conversation as a hypothetical, but it is a conversation that is out there as one waiting to be had should that happen. But that's not going to happen. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about what I think are much more likely scenarios for the game on Sunday. And the first two involve the Dolphins looking a lot like they have in those last couple of games. No, not necessarily the inconsistent passing game, but rather the undisciplined mistakes and penalties that, in my opinion, are what really cost the Dolphins chances to win against the Jets and Minnesota. Two games that were right there to win that the Dolphins managed to lose. It was those penalties and poor offensive line play. And those things that gave the Dolphins more work than they would have needed to do otherwise. They decreased the margin for error that the Dolphins have. And, I mean, every time you make an error, it decreases that margin of error. And when you make too many, well, that's what happens. And the Dolphins fall short. And there's also the fact that the Dolphins aren't forcing turnovers on defense the way that they have in the past. That's also something that is hurting the Dolphins here. And so these are things that I've been concerned about, and we've talked about them on the show. And there have been some fans who have been, let's say, maybe not so worried about those things. Maybe they're brushing it off. They're chalking it up that it's not a big deal. These are not things that are holding the Dolphins back, because when Tua returns, he's going to come back, and that return is going to counterbalance all the messiness, and the Dolphins will win these games anyway, right? These are the people that you will hear that will say that if Tua had played, the Dolphins would be 5-1. Well, or 5-1 or 6-0. And you know what? Maybe they're right. And maybe the Dolphins do win if they continue to play sloppy, but Tua returns. In fact, I think that is one of the scenarios that I can see playing out on Sunday, is that the Dolphins play that same kind of brand of sloppy, undisciplined football, but Tua's return sparks the offense just enough and allows the Dolphins to eke out a victory in the way that they did against Baltimore and Buffalo, right? And so it's certainly possible that could be exactly right. That while the margin of error gets decreased, the Dolphins find a way to win because Tua is able to spark the offense to do just enough. Of course, there's also a scenario that finds the Dolphins being just as sloppy, just as undisciplined, with the same kind of issues. And in spite of Tua's return, the Dolphins still fall short. And of course, in that scenario, I know that there will be people immediately standing up and pointing fingers and finding new excuses that we've never heard of before. But at the end of the day, if that is the scenario, and the Dolphins lose a close game to Pittsburgh in spite of Tua's return because of all of those other issues, I think in that scenario, the Dolphins have to look themselves in the mirror and face the problem head on. Something that they've seemingly had to do every year for the last 2 decades plus. And because in that situation, the Dolphins would find themselves in danger of watching their season go completely off the rails. Yes, there would be 10 games to play. There would be time to correct the mistakes. 3 and 4 is not necessarily a death sentence. But in the same way that we were talking about how all the sloppiness leaves the Dolphins with very little margin of error in individual games, losing this game on Sunday would leave them with little to no margin of error for the remaining 10 games of the season, including that stretch run in December when you start taking on the likes of the 49ers, the Chargers, the Packers, the Bills, the Patriots in New England. So the competition will get tougher. the weather will get colder and the Dolphins' margin of error will get smaller. But then there's the third scenario, and it's the third scenario that I think is actually most likely to be the one that plays out on Sunday. And this is the one, honestly, that I'm also really, really hoping for. And it's here. Here's where we get the magic. Tua returns. He inspires everyone on the team to lift up their game. The penalties cease, or at least are greatly reduced. The defense stands up and forces turnovers from whoever the quarterback is for the Steelers, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. Tua is slinging the ball all over the yard to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, maybe even Mike Gesicki. Remember him? Maybe Cedric Wilson. Who knows? Coach McDaniel will commit to the run for a whole game and not just give up on it in the second half. Raheem Mostert will run for 100 yards plus, get a tutty in there as well. And the Dolphins rout the Steelers, putting up a 40-burger, holding Pittsburgh to single digits. And if that happens in that scenario, well, I guess then we all go back to the kitchen and make up a fresh batch of Kool-Aid to put in the refrigerator. Because maybe we don't drink it right away, but we stick it in the refrigerator so that it's close by in case we see more of that kind of performance in the future. Because then the Dolphins will begin what we all hope would be a pretty dominant stretch of football over, fairly weak competition. And then the 1972 perfect season Miami Dolphins will laugh. They will celebrate. They won't be drinking champagne on Sunday because the Eagles have a bye, so they'll remain undefeated, but they'll still have themselves a good old time. And then maybe we can put that narrative, the one that's sneaking up on us, that maybe they are still the same old Dolphins. Maybe we can take that narrative and put it back to bed for a little while. From where I'm sitting, that's what we all want to have happen on Sunday. And quite frankly, there are plenty of reasons to believe that it could be what happens on Sunday. Will it happen? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, let's hear from the brain.
What's up, Dolphin fans? So I thought we'd be recording our regular show with Josh and I after my solo show earlier this week, but it didn't work out. So just going to do a quick video here to just explain where I'm at, what I expect to see, what I want to see and hope to see out of this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sunday night football, so that's exciting. We'll have the national stage again. Hopefully this time it goes much better than it did the last time. And hopefully everybody can stay healthy. And I think health is one of the big stories coming into this. Obviously, you're getting Tua back, and we're hoping that the Dolphins can end this stretch, not just a 3-game losing streak, but 3 straight games where the Dolphins have had to finish the game with a quarterback that didn't start the game. So hopefully Tua's not just ready and looking like himself, but he plays well and plays throughout the game. It would be a nice welcome change for the Dolphins heading into this one. But it's not just Tua. Also, it looks like we're getting Teron Armstead back, who actually practiced today, which was the first time that he's practiced since after the Patriots game prior to the Week 2 matchup against Baltimore. Then even the games that he played between there, Teron Armstead was nursing that toe injury and didn't play. It's a little concerning the way that he's talking about this toe injury, because it sounds like this is a kind of injury that's lingering and he's only playing on it because this has a big game feel. So hopefully that's not something that's significantly going to limit him as a player, because if it does, then, it might not be the huge improvement that Miami really needs it to be, especially when they're bringing back Tua. But hopefully you get vintage Teron Armstead. He doesn't miss a beat, and that makes the rest of the offensive line better around him, particularly right next to him, where it looks like all signs point to it's still going to be Liam Eichenberg. I'm curious to see how long this experiment with Eichenberg goes at left guard if he's not able to play at a higher level. But that said, hopefully by having basically your franchise left tackle right next to him, that eases things a little bit for Eichenberg, and he's able to at least be serviceable there. And then on the other side of the line, you're finally getting Austin Jackson back, who has basically missed the entire season, save for like 15, 16 snaps, whatever it was, in the opener against the Patriots. I think the biggest thing that this allows Miami to do is I think it gives them the opportunity to get the run game going. Because I think where the biggest boost is from getting Austin Jackson over a Brandon Shell or a Greg Little is his ability in run blocking to get to the next level and really make some things happen upfield. And so it could potentially, spring the way for, a couple of big runs from Raheem Mostert, not just these 8 to 10 yard runs that are nice, but, something where the Dolphins can actually break a big play in the running game. And maybe it's not even Raheem Mostert. Maybe it's, an end around or a double reverse with a Jalen Waddle or a Tyreek Hill. The Dolphins have those kind of weapons that can really attack the edge. So having a tackle like Austin Jackson, who can really, create that edge on the outside, I think is a big boost to this offense potentially. But obviously everybody's focus is going to be on how well they can protect the passer and protect Tua. And hopefully, everything works out there. Obviously, no matter how you feel about the whole injury with Tua and, if the Dolphins rushed him back or if he should have played on that game again, no matter what you feel and no matter what the doctors say, I think it's human nature to feel a little bit uneasy coming into this game because the lasting image that we all have right now of Tua until he is back out on the field is him being, taken off the field on a stretcher. So I feel a little bit uneasy. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but all signs between, all the doctors, all the concussion tests have shown that he's fine and he's ready to play. And, unfortunately, concussions are part of the game. And unfortunately, that specific concussion led to, what was a pretty scary sight on the field on that Thursday night game. So hopefully Tua can come out, play well. If he gets hit, bounce back up and really show that that's in the past and it's behind him and we can just get on with playing football and this can stop being a narrative. However, I will say it's the hypocrisy is undeniable that on the opposing side of things, we're talking about which quarterback we're going to be facing in spite of the fact that Kenny Pickett did have a concussion, was diagnosed with a concussion, and is in the concussion protocol, yet somehow is able to practice. And I understand that it's non-contact, but I'm just very confused as to how this is possible, given all of the stringent new protocols. And furthermore, how this is not a huge story, considering what a big deal the media made out of this. After the Tua injury against Cincinnati. So, I mean, obviously could do a whole show on the hypocrisy of the NFL and on the hypocrisy of sports media and social media and all of the fans and the faux outrage versus the real outrage that exists on Twitter and all things social media. But we're going to keep it the rest of this thing just about football and what I think we're going to see and what I hope to see in this upcoming game against Pittsburgh. So this is a big game. I discussed in the solo show that I recorded Monday night that dropped late Monday night and probably listened to it on Tuesday. that the Dolphins are kind of where they're supposed to be right now, and where most people probably expected them to be. Even the most positive Dolphin fans probably expected this team to be in this position coming into this game. They just aren't here how we thought they would get here. And so they've taken a situation where they seem to create all of this margin of error and in fact raise the ceiling to a point where this looked like it was no longer a fringe playoff team, but a playoff team that potentially could be, I don't know how many people thought they were going to win the division with Buffalo in the division, but even still a team that would win 11, 12 games and easily make the playoffs and be a contender. We're not there anymore at this given moment. We still could get there conceivably, depending on how things go over this next stretch, but they've kind of erased their margin for error to get to that point, because to me, the goal has always been, when you mapped out a formula for the Dolphins to be a playoff team this year, the formula was always, you got to get to those last 6 games at least 7-4. Maybe you can get there at 8-3, and that puts you in a really, really strong spot. But if you can get there to 7-4, and you go 500 in the last 6 games, which is admittedly an extremely tough part of the schedule, and it looks a little bit tougher now than it did at the beginning of the season, thanks to what the Jets are doing right now. You win 10 games and you've got a good shot at making the playoffs. I don't think 10 games guarantees you the playoffs. I picked the Dolphins to win 10 games before the season started and said that they'd miss the playoffs and then be on the outside looking in. And I think that's still a possibility. But I think if you win 10 games, you've got a shot. It's just the way things fall around you. And the way to get there is to get to 7-4. Well, now you're 3-3. So to get to at least 7-4, it means that you've got to win at the very least 4 of these next 5 games. And, here you go. You got Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, Houston, or Cleveland and Houston. So pick all of those games out, like which is the most losable game. I think all 5 of those games, Miami is the better team. But it's hard to, look, the Dolphins have lost 3 games in a row. So how do you even pick the Dolphins to win 4 out of 5, let alone winning 5 in a row to get to 8-3? If they lose this game to Pittsburgh, I'm going to lose a lot of faith in what this team is, especially given the fact that one of the big issues that everybody's been pointing to has been health. And this is going to be the healthiest the team has been in 3 weeks. This is going to be the healthiest the team has been in 3 weeks. You're going to have all of the energy of a night game at home. You're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the undefeated 72 team, the only team to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl, New England fans. And I think you're going to have all of the electricity in that building. You've got Brian Flores coming in. So you get the Tua Brian Flores redemption. You're getting healthy. It just, everything seems to be lining up for this to be a breakout for the Dolphins. But if they lose it, I think at that point, it's time to really reassess, because there's been a lot of built-in excuses over the last 3 weeks. We all drank the Kool-Aid. Well, maybe not all of us. I know I was slow to the party, but I did it on air. And since I did it, I feel like I've cursed this team more than they've already been cursed by building their stadium on an Indian burial ground. I don't know how true that is, but it certainly feels true. But if they lose this game against Pittsburgh, I don't know what the opposite of drinking the Kool-Aid is. If it's regurgitating the Kool-Aid, if it's spitting out the Kool-Aid. But it's time to spit out the Kool-Aid if they lose this game. So it's going to be a test. I think that this team still looks like they're close and looks like some injuries and some mental errors and just some small details that have been going overlooked has been the difference in this team losing these last 3 games. I'm not saying that they should have won all 3, but I think they should have won at least one of the 3, and the one is probably the game last week against Minnesota, where it kind of felt like we just gave them the game in spite of really controlling it in most assets of the football game. So do I think that the Dolphins are going to be able to get right when everything is going their way? Do I think they're going to be able to turn around their fortunes? And what do they need to do to get there? I think offensively, I talked about how they're getting healthy. So I think just that we should get a better performance from this offense. We should get the crispness that we saw in the first 3 weeks. And it's not like the offense was without its warts in the first 3 weeks, but you definitely saw the better flow, the better explosiveness, just a better all-around feel for what this offense is supposed to look like with Tua at the helm. And I think we're going to get that. The question mark is, obviously, can this offensive line come together against a pretty strong Pittsburgh defensive line? And on the other side of the ball, what does this Dolphins defense do? Obviously, the injuries in the secondary are killer right now. I mean, just absolutely killer. No team in the league ever can really go unscathed when you talk about the number of injuries that the Dolphins have had to their cornerbacks. Byron Jones obviously not having played this year, Trill Williams getting hurt out in the first preseason game, signing Mackenzie Alexander, him getting hurt basically a week later, Nick Needham now out for the year, Kader Kohou is limited. Hopefully we're getting Kader Kohou back out there, and Noah Igbenogany, who knows, maybe last week getting thrown out there to the Wolves, having a little bit of a shaky start. Maybe you're starting to see some sort of development there where Noah Igbenogany at the very least can be a serviceable cornerback. I still think they're going to need to do something long-term with that position, but I'm of the opinion that in this game, we've seen what this Dolphins defense can do when they're bringing pressure, but they're playing soft coverage because they're basically scared that their corners are going to get beat. I think you got to just trust your guys at this point. The Dolphins need to put pressure on the opposing quarterback. The Dolphins need to create turnovers. This sitting back on our heels and waiting for the other team to screw up mentality is not working. The Dolphins defense has to force the issue a little bit, and you've got a rookie quarterback coming in. Let's throw some things at him that he hasn't seen. Let's put some pressure on him. Let's hit him. See if we can get a strip sack or fumble. Let's see if we can put him behind the sticks or just hurry things up a little bit and make him make a bad throw or a bad decision. It's time for this defense. You talk about this defense or this team being a defensive-led team. The defense played well last week. They played their asses off. But this defense can't just be like an okay defense or a good defense or a bend but not break defense. This needs to be a dominant defense. And when you play a rookie quarterback in a home night game and he's making his second start, right? I think it's his first start because he came in relief last week. You got to throw the kitchen sink at this guy. This is a big game. Defense needs to step up. I think you need to let your corners go out on an island. And if Kenny Pickett beats you once or twice, then he beats you once or twice. And you try to do your best to, if he hits a big play, don't let it kill you. Don't give up a touchdown. Like, you can give up a 40, 50-yard play, but still be able to recover and then maybe force a field goal. Or do something with that. It's not like every big play that you give up has to be an 80-yard touchdown. But I think you say, look, we're going to live and die being aggressive against an inexperienced quarterback and bank and bet on our defense that more often than not, they're not going to get beat and they're going to force some mistakes that are going to be necessary for the Dolphins to flip the field position, get momentum, and actually play with a lead for the first time since the first game of the season. I believe that all of that is going to happen in this game. Maybe I'm just hanging on to that last drop of Kool-Aid that's still somehow in my system for 4 weeks. Maybe I'm delusional, but I still believe that this team can get where they need to go by the end of the season. And in order to get there, they're going to need to start turning it around this week. I think the Dolphins get it done, and I think they get it done in impressive fashion. I think the Dolphins win this one 31-13. Book it.
And that's it for this episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We appreciate it. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us in podcast form, we appreciate you taking part and listening to our little podcast that we do where we talk about the Miami Dolphins. Here's to an easy afternoon, hanging out on Sunday, watching other teams play, keeping track of fantasy football, and then after we've waited all day, it'll be Sunday night, and the Dolphins will take on the Pittsburgh Steelers and hopefully get us that big win to get this season back on track. But until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and as always, go Dolphins!